Thank you, Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome this committee's eager efforts on this issue, because I think we can make a difference on a bipartisan basis on this. Dr. Wyszynski, let's talk a little bit more about China specifically. You mentioned about your concerns about antibiotics, and that should be prioritized. Tell us what else you think should be prioritized. What specific medicines do you believe we're most vulnerable to for dependency? Lay the risk out for us.
So thank you for this question. So I think every one of us here at this table would agree that antibiotics are by far the most vulnerable. If you actually look at India and what Indian government is concerned about, they are also themselves very nervous about their own reliance on China, especially around antibiotics. And so a lot of the subsidies that they are doing is to actually de-risk their own supply chains, actually on our behalf to a large extent. So this is great because they're making these investments without the American consumers having to pay for it, taxpayers to pay for this. But there's this concern about antibiotics. That's by far the most concerning. I think it's much more difficult, back to the mapping, exactly which drugs have the largest exposure to China other than that. So I would say that this is, in a sense, we don't have to wait to figure out that antibiotics and we need to move on. On other things, we do need to do more homework and understand it. I will say that in terms of mapping, I am a little wary about mapping it for everything. I would much rather start with, here are the essential medicines, and here, let's figure out where they come from, because those are the ones that we know we will be able to secure. So I would probably start prioritizing drugs first in terms of their importance, and then really in detail mapping, because it's not just figuring out where the KSM comes from. The key starting material is only one of the chemicals that you use. You need reagents and you need solvents, and those are largely made in China. So you have to know all the pieces, and if you try to do this for 3,000 drugs, we're gonna be stuck in analysis paralysis for a really long time. So I would say yes, absolutely mapping, but let's prioritize where we map first.
Does anyone want to add to that answer from their perspective?
I do. On the mapping, one of the things we've found is we have worked to map several hundred, is that there's purposeful obfuscation of where the supply comes from. And so on
By whom?
By companies in China who in other areas where
They pretend they're from the United States?
Correct. They're many different versions of a company, so you can't quite track back to, is it produced in a China facility? Could be a multitude of reasons. It could be that maybe the facility has some sort of FDA warning. It could be just based on business and ownership structure, that they don't want it to be known who owns which company, but it's very difficult. We've found that, although we're working through it, there are data sets that allow you to identify where those sources are coming from beginning to end.
Tony or Andrew, do you have anything you want to add to the China problem?
Yeah, I would just add that I think it underscores our inability ultimately to have oversight into China and to really understand what the problem and the sourcing is. I agree that we should focus on essential medicines. That's a definable problem. We can zero in on that. But I think the strategy is to then move that into domestic manufacturing as quick as possible. Then we have control of the supply chain.
If I could add to that, we've also taken a lens on not only essentials, because some of these are very, very low-cost medicines, but also what do the healthcare systems need? What do national retailers need? What does the government need? And what makes economic sense to produce here in the United States with advanced technology? When we put those lists together, we did come together with a prioritized list where it makes economic sense. There's demand for those medicines. There's a need for them, and they can be a sustainable investment.
Have you submitted that list to us?
We've submitted it in collaboration with ASPR, and be happy to submit those as well.
Submit it to the committee.
Be happy to.
And Andrew?
Yep. Yeah, and the final part that I would add is that this does have to be a drug-by-drug approach, especially for a program like the TRQ. And I agree that the antibiotics are one of the most critical and one of the most urgent to start on. And these are going to have different solutions because they have different supply chains. But additionally, I would say that India is not necessarily a de-risking from China. India has plenty of its own problems, whether it's safety issues, FDA flags that have been in India facilities. And as on top of that, India had the same problems during COVID. They cut off some of their supply to the United States, not because of any adversarial geopolitical reasons, but they have their own population they're trying to supply. So the more we can bring back to the U.S., the safer our supply chain will be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.